This is dropped on Thursday Thoughts here at SDH. Thanks for hanging out with us. John here, you there. It's a busy show. All right. I'm going to work backward. Hour 2 is stacked. 10 o'clock, it'll be our weekly visit from our friends at the USL Show, and literally at the USL Show. Kaylor Hodges, I know, will be here because I sent him the link to the show after I invited him this morning. I didn't send the link and the invite at the same time. So Kaylor Hodges and the USL Show will be with us at 10 o'clock to go through what happened in week number 1. Bit of housekeeping. Neil Rule, the voice of Detroit City, will be with us at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to discuss the 8th seed working their way through. Then 10:30, it'll be the standard visit, 10:30, 10:35, last half hour of the show. Niko Moreno and our friends from Pulso Sports and the Soccer Bar will be with us to discuss what's going on from the Pacific perspective. He had a hell of a scoop. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about round 1 of the playoffs. We'll talk about Thunderdome in hour number 1, anticipating a visit from an OG to drop in to discuss one of the matchups from last night. Let's see. We've got all of that stuff. We've got news of the morning. We've got Sandro Tonali. We've got Premier League games on Christmas. We've got David De Gea possibly returning to the Premier League. So news of the morning and MLS Thunderdome in hour number 1. USL at 10 o'clock. And Niko Moreno joining for his normal Thursday visit at 10:30 or 10:35 for the last half hour of the show. Michael, good morning. Kind of happy that New Jersey whooped up on the Crown. Whooped up on the Crown. So there you go. Good AM all. Yeah, it was nuts last night, and it took a while for the engine to turn over for Charlotte, and they were down. And who had Elias Manuel as your first hat trick of the postseason in your pool? Nope, you're a lying liar. You are a lying liar. We'll get into that coming up in just a little bit. First off, opening kickoff brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee, kickoffcoffeeco.com. For those of you who are watching on either our YouTube channel, on Twitch, or on the 200 Indie Character app, I'm covering up the QR code for hour number 2. That's the QR code for our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Don't forget, use the code SoccerDownHere15. You get 15% off your purchase. They, in turn, take 10% reinvested into the youth game, youth initiatives from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. All right. Believe it or not, it actually is Open Cup qualifying. And this comes from our friends at Reddit, who directed me into a certain direction from our friends at Hudson River Blue. We are actually in qualifying for the Open Cup. The All-In tournament is already having folks trying to figure out who's going to qualify for the 2024 version. And we just had the chant for 2023. So our friends at Hudson River Blue send us this particular story from yesterday, basically from the matchups from earlier in the week. Byline, Queens, New York. The U.S. Open Cup qualifier between New York Pan-Cyprian Freedoms, that is the name of the club, and New York Renegades FC back on Sunday, October 2nd, was abandoned in the 76th minute after a Renegades player threatened to stab the ref after the game. It was the only qualifier to take place within the 5 boroughs. When the match was abandoned, the Pan-Cyprian Freedoms were beating the Renegades 3-0. Because of the threat, the Renegades, a team from Hicksville, New York that competes in the UPSL, were officially disqualified from the competition, and there actually are highlights of the match. A heated second half is the qualifier, is the headline, the subhead. The match was held at Belson Stadium at St. John's, a venue regularly used by NYCFC organization for both first-team U.S. Open Cup matches, reserve team matches, and had the Renegades on the road. the Hudson River Blue reporter was actually in the stands. In the 74th minute, according to the reporter, Michael Batista, here's what went down. Jonathan Silvera of the Renegades was shown a yellow card for tripping James Tristino of the Freedoms. And this is Batista's words. This is how he phrased what happened. 16 minutes to go. Down 3, and one team is leading the other. Visitors were becoming more aggressive as the match turned against them. The referee had spoken to both teams at various points. By this time, the Renegades had already been shown at least 2 other yellow cards. Players began to crowd around the center ref near the spot of the foul, just in front of the Renegades bench. Renegades forward Samuel Casares, a former professional player in Paraguay who had a loan stint with the Cosmos in 2015, was also shown a yellow card. From the video and the actions displayed, it seems as though he said something to the referee to warrant the caution. While this was happening, Johannes Alexander of the Renegades was visibly arguing from a distance. This took place as players from both teams stood between him and the referee. It looked to be less in a hold him back situation and more of a block his sight and I'll try to let cooler heads prevail moment. However, Alexander continued to close the distance. In the 76th minute, Alexander was shown a straight red. Players from both teams once again got between the midfielder and the officials. Alexander refused to leave the field right away. Alexander continued to argue and pointed towards the official in anger. And apparently there is a link. At the time of the article was printed, there is a link to the actual match still up on Game in Frame, which I've never heard of before. Differing reports on what happened next, as this reporter and other media were in the stands and witnessed the events from afar. Alexander did not leave the field after being ejected. According to witnesses close to the field, he allegedly shouted, quote, "If I see you on the street, I'm going to blanking stab you." End quote. 3 sources close to the situation reported hearing the threat in question with slight variations. One heard, "If I catch you outside," instead of "if I see you on the street." Another heard, quote, "I'm going to blanking mess you up," instead of "I'm going to blanking stab you." All 3 agreed that Alexander did say the expletive. After Alexander spoke, the referee blew his whistle 3 times to signify the end of the match. Referees huddled together, didn't tell the coaches or press any information. They instead asked for 30 minutes to discuss the matter, but quietly left the stadium before that time. According to a statement from U.S. Soccer, the Freedoms game with the Renegades was abandoned in the 76th minute due to player misconduct. This phrasing was also used in the official round recap on the U.S. Soccer Federation website. Now, according to, and this is a long phraseology here from the rule book. According to the 2024 Open Division and Qualifying Rounds Handbook, Section 7, Part 3, Subsection 308, Amendment F, quote, "If a match is abandoned because of the conduct of a team in the match, the other team shall automatically be awarded a win, and with the team engaging in the misconduct shall be awarded a loss. If a game must be abandoned due to the misconduct of both teams, the referee will file a complete report, and the status of the game will be decided by the commissioner. The commissioner will immediately refer the matter to the adjudication and discipline panel for a recommendation before issuing a decision. U.S. Soccer Federation confirmed to Hudson River Blue that the matter has been brought up to the adjudication and discipline panel. Any punishment and fines will be determined by them. Punishment could be for Alexander, the Renegades, or potentially both parties." So, fun with the Open Cup. And we welcome in Jared Smith. And we also welcome in an OG. And I feel like I need music for this. Jessica Charman. Morning, Jess.
Morning. Can you hear me? I'm driving. I just wanted to make sure the sound sounds good. I can hear you guys loud and clear.
Yep, you're good. Just keep the microphone right there.
Perfect.
All right. So, Jared, first question to you is Jess.
Yeah, just after last night's game, I know it's a tough result, and it's a strong game with a lot going on and a lot of layers to it. As far as this offseason for Charlotte, what's the big thing you're looking for this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, right? Because the one thing you have to do after a match like that is think to the future, and you can wallow in disappointment. You can wallow in the fact that it probably didn't represent the last few games and the momentum that he built. That wasn't the Charlotte FC side in terms of performance that we've got used to seeing. And now you have to realize that there's going to be a lot of, revolving doors happening with players. I mean, I don't know the insider information about who's going to go, but you can look at headlines. You can look at the fact that Karol Świderski's talked very openly about wanting to go to Europe. And if the guy that's led you in goals in a significant way is going to be exiting, you've got to find a way to replace him. I think in terms of designated players, it's been, and it always is tough to find hitting designated players. Not everyone can have a Giakoumakis come in and tear the league on fire, but they need to find somebody to replace Świderski, because out of your 3 designated players, he was the one that had an impact and adjusted to this league. So I think it's about, I don't think you need to clean house completely. There's plenty of players that belong in MLS, but you need to be able to find those pieces that really turn you from a team that slid into the playoffs, into that play-in game, into a team that's competing for a home berth in a best of 3.
So, Jess, let me ask you about 2 names in particular. I know that there have been folks that you've been really high on. Kerwin Vargas, who had a worldie, and Patrick Agyemang, who I would swear is 17, 22 inches tall. What do you think about those 2 in there?
Oh, they're just amazing players. And I can speak from Patrick because I had the chance to sit down with him and speak to him for 15, 20 minutes in an interview. That is one of the good guys in this sport. I mean, the most genuine dude that had to go D3 because he didn't have any D1 offers, played D3, worked himself up to a D1 offer, then gets drafted, fights his way in MLS Next Pro. And, I mean, he was Charlotte FC's best player. He got 45 minutes, and actually Westwood, the captain, came out in the press conference and said, that's, in all my years, 15 seasons I've played, that is one of the best substitute performances I've ever seen. He changed the game. And there's going to be people that are watching him from what he did in Leagues Cup. There's going to be people watching him from what he did today. He's a guy we need to hang on to. For Kerwin Vargas, anyone that knows me knows that Colombian players are often near and dear to my heart. And you look at him, though. He's come from Porto. What other Colombian players have come through Porto? James Rodriguez, Falcao. I mean, that Portuguese side is a feeder to Colombian talent, and it looks like Kerwin Vargas has the potential if he's given minutes. And it's been a pleasure to watch the growth of Kerwin Vargas. We've always seen that he has a little bit of that sizzle, a little bit of that, class, a little bit of that audacity to take those chances. But he really struggled early on in the season to adjust to the physicality of MLS, right? Like so many players do, perhaps, adjust to the physicality, adjust to the workload, adjust to the travel. But he's looked amazing. I mean, 3 goals in the last 3 matches. The quality of the goals has been unbelievable. Lattanzio came out and said he counts on Patrick Agyemang and Kerwin Vargas to be part of the unit next season. That makes me feel good, and I hope they're players that we protect because they're the future of this team.
Jarrett, go for it.
Those were the guys we wanted to talk about, especially when they came off the bench and what Agyemang did this year. For people who don't watch them week in and week out, are there any other players people should be kind of keeping an eye on who are maybe went under the radar? They might not have noticed this year, but if they're wanting to look really smart to their friends, they need to know these names for next season.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Privett's a guy, and he had a rough night yesterday, if I'm honest. The whole defense had a rough night, but Andrew Privet has been remarkable. The way he slotted in from getting drafted this year, a rookie, and slotted into the centre-back position and really helped the growth of this centre-back role. And he's that modern-day CB, right? He's what you expect to see in the Premier League, stepping up into the midfield, playing the ball, smart reading of. He was signed as a holding mid, as a midfielder, but he uses all those skills to his vision. So really excited about the growth of Privet. Adelson Malanda, I don't know how much longer he's going to be with the team again. If you only watched last night, none of the defenders covered themselves in glory. Let's be honest here. When you concede 5 goals off of 5 shots on target, your defense isn't going to be maybe highlighted for being well. But Adelson Malanda, I think, got snubbed a little bit with where he was placed in players under 22 because he's just so mature. He recovers well. And in a back line that faced so much adversity, starting with the passing of Anton Walkes, he had such big boots to fill. I mean, you had to come in and play in a position from a guy that passed away. Like, that's not an easy task for anybody. And Adelson Malanda came in with class. He came in with limited experience at senior football, and he has been a guy that has saved us on so many occasions.
Jess, if I had told you at the beginning of the season that Charlotte FC would have made it into the postseason and made it into Thunderdome in the Eastern Conference, what would you have told me?
How far did they go? Honestly, I'm being honest here. Like, it's tough, right? Because if you had told me before Anton that they made it into postseason, I would have thought they would have gone a lot further. Based on the signings they made, we thought Enzo Capetti was going to set the league on fire. Unfortunately, trying to find a way for Enzo Capetti and Karos Federski to really play on the pitch together has still proved to be a struggle. There's been moments where they've connected, but it's been few and far in between, and that's been a bit disappointing. Once Anton passed, I knew it was going to be an emotional slog, right? Like, that was so hard for us as journalists. I couldn't imagine how it was for players in the locker room. So I think they've been resilient, and you look at how they managed to find the momentum to get in, to control their own destiny. I'm very proud of the guys. And I think you asked me that question in 2 weeks' time, and I feel really good about it. I feel, you know what, they did themselves proud. They fought through. They took care of business. They qualified for the wild card match. But right now, I think this one hurts me because I feel like the guys didn't get a chance to really show what they could do. That wasn't the same Charlotte FC side we've seen. And, you know, you go into the locker room at 3-0 and you're hoping for the best. You're hoping to be able to turn things around. But it was a mountain to climb the minute Elias Manuel decided to do what he does against Charlotte. And, I mean, Jason and I hope Jason won't be mad at me for saying this. Jason and I were talking on the phone on my drive to Charlotte. And I was like, that damn Manuel. And Jason was like, yeah, but he's not that good of a player. I was like, Jason, you don't understand. Like, he sees Charlotte FC there, and suddenly he's like MLS MVP caliber. Like, it just felt like a cruel irony that the guy that scored more goals against Charlotte in his career combined than any other, like, than all of his goals left in MLS, had a hat trick. I mean, it's just painful for me. So I think time is a healer. Time will allow us to stand at it more, you know, more evenly, but that one still feels sore just with the way that it went down on the pitch.
Jarrett.
As far as, you know, I know you talked about the Swiderski thing. I know that's been circling around for a while now. You've got Capetti, you've got guys like Vargas, and a nice mix of talent. How do you strike that balance, though, with having young guys who can come in, flip games on their head, but also having those veterans who don't have that naivete in a playoff game that sometimes we see, not just from Charlotte, but from other teams when they get in the playoffs and the lights are a little brighter and things are a little tighter? How do you strike that balance in terms of getting that right mix of, you know, veterans who can stabilize a game and young guys who can just go wild?
Yeah, it was tough because I don't think there was a single player in that starting lineup that had experience in playoffs, right? Not one. They had Leagues Cup experience, which I think was kind of like a good preparation in terms of, you know, must-win matches, but none of them had been there in playoffs. And as we know, as someone that's arrived in America, playoffs just hit differently in the US, and it's a different kettle of fish, to say. So it was a hard balance to play, but, you know, when you looked at the experience we had on the bench, Justin Merrim, Derek Jones, it's players that aren't really at the stage of their career now that can get going from the start. So what's good now is you have a bunch of young, exciting players that got their feet wet. You know, they had that experience. They had a difficult experience, but I think in a year's time, you look at this match, and if you're in a game like this again, you've got players with an axe to grind that want to make sure they take care of business the next time they get an opportunity to it. So not all is lost, but I think you're right. There's a balance of finding players now in this team that are veterans of even the league, because it's funny, there's a lot of talk about needing MLS veterans that, you know, people like Ashley Westwood who have played in the Premier League, people like Scott Arfield who have played in the Premier League. Is that veteran presence the same as somebody that has a Michael Parkhurst influence for Atlanta United, a Greg Garza? You know what I mean? Like, these players that had done it in MLS, that understood the workload, that understood the travel, because, you know, I have spoken to Westwood and it caught him off guard quite how intense American soccer schedules were.
All right, Jess, now that you are driving home, I'm hoping both hands on the wheel. How do you see the rest of the Eastern Conference playing?
Oh, how do I see it going? I mean, I'm excited to see that matchup between FC Cincinnati and Red Bulls, honestly, because we've seen the Red Bulls don't give two Fs, right? But they just don't. I mean, they beat FC Cincinnati 2-1 when they last played them, so they're not going to care about going into TQL Stadium. I think that's going to be a really fun best of three. I think I'm going to be present for the Atlanta United home game. Mike Conti's working on getting me a credential so I can do a little bit of spotting in the house. So excited to get to witness that one as well. I think it's fun now. Like, obviously, I'm gutted Charlotte's not in it, but to be able to watch it as a neutral, quote unquote, it is such a fun experience to enjoy the football. I think there's going to be some upsets. I think there's going to be some penalty shootouts. I think there's going to be at least one game where a team progresses on 2 penalty shootouts, and whether that's for good or for bad, I think that's going to happen. That's my hot take of the wild card round. Who's my favorite for it? Ooh. I don't know. I feel like the easy answer is FC Cincinnati based on how they play, but I think the Red Bulls could make that very, very difficult for them.
And obviously, we'll hold you to it. Jared, one more for you.
And I actually want to ask about one guy on the club who came in the summer because Charlotte, let's be honest, Charlotte nailed both of their summer windows in the last 2 years, making that team better. Scott Arfield came in, and as someone who watches and has seen him out of the Scottish game, I did not expect him to hit the ground running like he did this year, making an impact. How big is that been? We talked about young guys versus veterans, but how big was that bringing in a guy who is more experienced and has handled some really rough leagues and rough situations to come into that side?
Yeah, I love him as a leader on and off the pitch, right? And I think his chemistry with Ashley Westwood is really, really good. Scott's a great guy that will give 120% to the team. I mean, you see the quality of the goal he scored. He's, right place, right time, arrives at the box. I was a little surprised to see that he didn't get as many minutes as maybe I would have expected for him during his time from arriving. I know that I've got a lot of Rangers fans that are kind of peed off to see that he left and he's not even starting every week in MLS. But to have that presence coming off of the bench has been brilliant. And I think what Charlotte's done well in the transfer windows is to find the right older players to come. You're not getting retirement players. You're getting players that still have 2-3 years to give, which is a great window to be able to trap them in. And then you're also getting the young guys, the obscure guys, the guys coming from Toulouse, the guys coming from Porto that maybe aren't on everybody's radar. So this gives me hope, Jarrett, for the off-season windows and seeing who they can add to the table, because February's a long way away, boys. I've got a lot of time to think about stuff. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see how many of the players we recognize, because, look, as fan bases do, and you guys know it all too well with Atlanta United, you fall out of playoff contention and everybody wants to, shut up shop and change every single person from front office to comms team to, social media directors. Everybody's job is up for the line for some people, and that's not the way it needs to be. We need to add a couple of good pieces. We need to, remove some players that probably are taking up wage bills that don't play anymore, and just try and nail 1 or 2 signings, and I think Charlotte FC is going to be solid.
Last question for you comes from Abby, and she wants to know, what is your go-to tea in the morning?
I don't drink tea. I'm sorry, guys. I don't. I know, the irony. And based on this cold I have, Jackson keeps recommending I should be drinking some sort of tea. Guys, tea, I don't know. I've just never enjoyed it. And sweet tea, I'm sorry, y'all. I love living in Georgia, but sweet tea is another, that's the noise I make if I accidentally sip a sweet tea. It's just like, So I am a coffee drinker. I do have a connection, considering that we are investors in a farm in Colombia. So I do have connections with homegrown Colombian coffee. So I am a Colombian coffee dark roast drinker in the morning. So that's how I get this beautiful energy to bounce through the walls and drive back and forth from Charlotte. What has it been, 40 times this year? I know the I-85. I know every exit of the I-85. I can tell you that. I can tell you where all the good gas stations are.
Right there with you. As an OG, you can knock on the door at any time. Just be safe. Get back to the time of the planet. Thanks as always, guys. We'll catch up soon, my friend.
Thank you, boys. I will see you on, what is it, November the 4th? Is that the game? November 7th. I think it's November 7th.
So? Yes, on Wednesday?
7th. I think it's the 7th. See you then. We'll
Be good. Jessica Charman joining from I-85, some point between Charlotte and probably Hartwell at this point, I would imagine. That sound about right? You know, you give yourself, Jared, a little time to wake up in the morning, and then
Hartwell sounds about right. Like that's because you're coming out of Clemson past the state line. Hartwell's right there at the line. It sounds about right. Didn't they open a Buc-ee's on 85 too? So people are flocking to that.
Oh, I think they did in South Carolina. I think you're right. I think you are correct. I think that is true. So it's good to get Jess's thoughts on the quick turn because, hey, she's driving home. What else is she going to do? So we got a chance to catch up with her. Game last night was 3-0 before you could blink. And John Tolkien had a great set piece from about 28. Elias Manuel had a hat trick. But, and that was why I wanted to bring in Vargas and Ajimang into the conversation because those are two dudes that you can hang your hat on for the future if you're Charlotte FC.
Yeah, they were amazing. Ajimang was amazing all year long. The second team, getting moments when he got them. First team, dude just right place, right time. He just popped up. We talked about this yesterday, and it's not a one-to-one, but we talked about it when we talked about Clint Dempsey. Some guys are just built for that moment, and they pop up in the right place, and then they don't hesitate. They just take the moment. And, he seems like that kind of guy. Really cool to see him in what was a really good year as well. I mean, I know Charlotte, I know Crown Legacy didn't win MLS Next Pro.
Yep.
He had number one seed in the East. He had a damn good year. Kind of piecing that roster together. And you always hope to create and to have someone like that come through. And it's not always going to be guys that come fresh out of the academy. It's going to be guys, who come through the college ranks, maybe. Guys who are just who need that change of scenery, like a Nick Firmino did.
Yep.
Remember, Nick Firmino was homegrown for New England.
Mm-hmm.
Goes and plays USL League One, then comes here, and there you go. You'll love to see those guys take those chances and then just thrive in them.
Yep. Comments from the Twitch pitch after Jess dropped her Colombian dark roast knowledge. Abby's hoping that Cincy knocks out Red Bulls. Michael Head hates Red Bulls, would love to see them grind CVG down to a pulp. Don't be surprised if that happens. Abby hates Red Bulls, not as much as Tampa, being our resident Fort Lauderdale Strikers fan, but wants them to lose. Michael says it'd be such chaos if Red Bull make the final. Love it if they make MLS Cup and then lose 5-0. And then Will says tonight in Huntsville is the last Oktoberfest at the HCFC Beer Garden of the year. He saw Crown Legacy 3 times. They weren't that impressive. I think Hunt City was Crown Legacy's boogeyman. I think they were. I don't know why it was. It might be the experience that Hunt City had under Jack Collison, but it might be the experienced players that were there for Hunt City. Nicky Law early, then Nicky goes and becomes the head coach in Tampa Bay. Assad Liati, all of those older veteran presences that you had there in Huntsville, they seem to be the kryptonite for Crown Legacy and all of the young guys that were there. And I would swear to God that you looked at Crown Legacy at times and it looked like an early career Hugh Freeze wide receiver core. Dudes that were 6'7", they're all 6'7", and they're all playing the X. They're all out there.
Ajimang is like an inch shorter than I am, which is to say he's a large human.
Yes. And so, I mean, you had a bunch of folks that just were large humans out there for Crown Legacy doing really well. And didn't make it out of I think their first playoff round, if memory serves. But now obviously did not make it to the final as Columbus Crew 2 did. So that's the early returns out of what happened last night. In the early game, Christian Latanzio, after the match, former Braves scribe Carol Walton, who is now up in Charlotte doing work, She said, Latanzio, not to find any excuses. I think they deserve to go through. I congratulate them, wish them well in the playoffs, but I think we're building something here. We need to learn those lessons and feel them inside. When we come back next season, we'll be stronger because of that. I think this game came a little bit too early for us. It was the third game in a very short space of time, and they looked brighter than us in the first half especially. We give away a couple of goals that I don't think we should concede, and when we had our chances to score our goals, we didn't take those. I think these are decisive moments, but all in all, I think the team showed the spirit that they have. We fought back. So
that's where I think where we were talking about veteran players versus, having a super young roster. Because, I mean, look, everybody I think would love on paper to have a super young roster where you have like 23 to 25-year-olds just balling out.
Yep.
But you have to have those veterans because, you played in 2 high-emotion games with Miami. The one in Miami where you let it slip. Then you have the game at home where it's just a boiler of emotion. But then you have to compartmentalize it immediately to go on the road a couple days later and play an RBA.
Yep.
I know we had talked to Jeff Lorenowitz about this in the past, but it can be, I know he had mentioned in the past that at times – it can be as tougher to play in an empty venue.
Yes.
Like when teams used to go play in New England against the Revs, it was tough because there's no one there. There's no energy. Even you can feed off of even like negative energy. Like people are jeering you. You can feed off of that. But when it's empty, like an RBA gets empty a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like the crowd was pathetic last night. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
And it's. Yeah, man, it can be tough, and I think having a balanced roster makes that easier to do. And this is why I'll be interested to see if they follow what the Atlantas and Seattles have done. If you move Swiderski, sounds like you're going to do that.
Yeah,
you go get a DP. Maybe you go get a DP who's in their mid to late 20s, who's been around the world, who's seen some stuff, who can be that kind of leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that'll be that will be the questions for Charlotte here in the offseason as they get ready to try and improve their standing and make it further into the playoff structure than they did this past season with everything going on around them. You still tip your hat to Charlotte with what they were able to accomplish, even though they were kind of grappling amongst themselves and against their own benefit at times. So Charlotte makes it in. And so, of course, Jared, as the way that this always works, it's almost like the March tournament where if you have one of the opening round days where you've got 13s, 12s, and 14s knocking off the higher seeds, then the other day is going to be just straight up chalk. So you had the crazy game early. And then you had a game that probably was putting folks to sleep late that ends up going to PKs. And as Will says, the San Jose Kansas City match was rough. It went to PKs.
It was. It put me to sleep.
Yeah. I legitimately had to not watch the last 15 minutes of regulation because I had it. And God bless Kevin Patrick and Kendra D. St. Aubin. But that was a tough slog last night. But making it through, and you end up with, Shallowy, making the PK that matters. And Tim Melia, of course, when it comes to PKs, we all know what he can do. So working your way through, it is sporting. Yeah, Abby. Fell asleep, got up later to go to bed, watch replay of the PKs. Will says, I was promised MLS After Dark, and it did not deliver. It just didn't deliver last night.
It delivered in game one. It showed up. This is like when Amazon says your package will be here between 2 and 6 p.m. and it gets dropped at your door at 1:30.
Yes.
That's what happened last night.
So that's what you end up with. You got MLS After Dark. Technically, it was After Dark. Sun had set, and you got craziness at RBA to lay things out. To bring things full circle, opening kickoff. I mentioned opening kickoff was the craziness in the Open Cup with the Pan Cyprian Freedoms and the Renegades, where you had a player basically threaten a ref and the ref called the match. So our friends at Hudson River Blue with the full story there. But yeah, when a Yeah, when a player says, if I see you on the street, I'm going to blanking stab you, or if I see you on the street, if I catch you outside, or, I'm going to blanking mess you up instead of blanking stab you. Everybody agreed that the expletive was there. So that was opening kickoff this morning. It was intrigue from the all-in tournament, as we traditionally have. But Michael Head, hope the powers that are at MLS HQ and Apple were happy with the Kansas City-San Jose match, driving viewership with a question mark.
I mean, well, here's the thing, though. Some of that is dependent on the fact that San Jose went in there looking for a draw.
Yeah.
And you can't control that. Like, we've been doing one-offs for years. That's the thing, though. Like, if my issue with the playoff format is I'm still not sold on the best of three. We'll just have to see how that goes, and I reserve the right to change my mind.
Absolutely.
First round one-offs, that's been going on since before 2017. Remember, Atlanta played in a one-off against Columbus in 2017.
Zach Steffen stands on his head. You get the ending.
Well, Zach Steffen stood on his head, but also Atlanta yacked it in the PKs. But it's a combination of both things. But like these one-offs have been a thing in the past. We just changed the name to a wild card.
Yeah.
Atlanta avoided that in 2018. But you've had those one-offs before.
Right.
That ain't new.
No.
Now, that being said, you also it helps to get an early goal in those games.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get that early goal, then it forces the action one way or another. When it doesn't come, you're going to get games like that where San Jose is like, cool, we'll play for PKs.
Yeah.
They were fine with that. They're not going to lose sleep over that because we did this a couple of years ago. Remember a couple of years ago, RSL gets into the playoffs on the last day of the season.
Oh, they
terrible.
It was so bad.
Well, yeah, but they got in because of a horrible officiating mistake.
Yes.
That literally, I think it was the Galaxy that
it was LAG. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, LAG didn't get in because of a blatantly missed call that swayed the entire playoff picture.
Yeah,
and it was not corrected. And RSL got in. RSL made it through 2 rounds, just playing the most negative, miserable games you've ever seen in your life.
That was hideous.
But because it was RSL, everybody's ex-dog darlings, because we do this, we assign these personalities and these stereotypes to teams, and then we excuse stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if Red Bulls goes out there and just plays a press, really messy game where they complete 45% of their passes, we're gonna like, oh, that's Red Bulls. That's, man, look at the fight. You just gotta win all the second balls. If Columbus went out there and played like that, it'd be confusing. We just assign these personalities to the teams across the board, and if somebody else goes out there and plays that kind of game that RSL played 2 years ago, maybe it's a different perception for people because it's RSL. It's, oh, look at the ex-dog. They just got that dog in them, and they're just able to grind it out. Because we just make excuses for some teams, but not for others.
Well, and also because they're not playing your team. We sit there and we can have an appreciation for teams that are mucking things up because they're not playing our favorite team at the time. They're messing up everybody else's party. They're not messing up your own.
And I agree with Shooter. Every series should be home and home. Yeah. Every shooter should be a tie. Every series should be a 2-game tie. One at home, one at away, and you figure it out. Every single one.
Yeah. Shocking no one, last night's numbers. Red Bulls at 42% possession last night. That's what they want.
And some of that is game state.
Yeah.
Like when they get that early goal, Red Bulls doesn't want the ball anyway. Mm-hmm. Red Bulls has the lead. They're definitely not going to take the ball when they have the lead.
Nope.
That's game state, and it's something we yell about all the time. But when they have a goal lead, then 2-goal lead, then 3-goal lead, you're lucky it was north of 30% at that point, because they're going to just basically dare Charlotte to break them down. And when Red Bulls get set up in a low block, it's kind of like wrestling somebody who's really good on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of like getting into like a traditional wrestling match with someone like Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
Like you get on the ground. Well, guess what? They're at home in their low block. They just kind of get settled into the ground match.
Mm-hmm. That's
where they're at home. They don't need the ball. They
don't
care.
No.
It's kind of like it's like Nashville, but It is different than what Nashville does, but Nashville loves to do the same thing. Like if Nashville, in their game against Orlando, get an early goal. Let's see Hani Mukhtar make something magic happen.
Oh,
They are going to make Orlando miserable.
Of course, absolutely.
Because they are going to sit in a shell. Walker Zimmerman is going to marshal the lines,
mm-hmm.
and they are going to pop out on the counter every so often, and that's it.
Yeah. Red Bulls last night, 63% completion on their passes, 216 to 342. Not that Charlotte was much better. They completed at 69%, had 23 long balls to 20. Red Bulls on crosses last night, 0 for 12.
Yeah. On to Shooter's question: has any soccer league in the history ever had 3-game series? I don't think so. And it's one of my bigger issues with all of it is that it came out so late in the proceedings in preseason. This is how we're going to do it. No, man, just like if you want to do the one-off, like wild card one-off, I'm okay with that. Do what you did last night, but then let the next round be 2-game tie, then 2-game tie, then 2-game tie. Then honestly, I'm fine with a 2-game tie for the MLS Cup final.
I am too.
And if you want to do it a one-off, that's fine. Whatever. I'd be totally okay if you want to do a 2-game tie with that too.
Yeah. Kaylor Hodges, USL Show, joining us in 15 minutes to go over the chaos, especially in the East in round number 1. Niko Moreno joining us at 10:30 for his traditional Thursdays with Niko. News in and around Sandro Tonali. This happened early this morning, our time. And it looks like Sandro Tonali is going to get a 10-month ban. So suspended from all football activity after being found guilty of breaching rules on gambling by the Italian Football Federation. Joined on a €70 million transfer, will now be prohibited from playing in any matches for either Newcastle or his national team in that period. Ban also includes a further 8 months of activities around rehabilitation, including therapy. Gabriele Gravina, president of the FIGC, that's their Fed, said an agreement has already been reached between the federal prosecutor's office and Sandro Tonali, which has to be endorsed by me, and I've already done that. 18-month plea bargain is foreseen, 8 months activities around rehabilitation. Some involve therapy, and there will be at least 16 engagements. Gambling is not a crime in Italy. This is from our friends at The Athletic. Gambling is not a crime in Italy as long as bets are placed on platforms recognized by the Customs and Monopolies agencies. The use of illegal platforms is punishable with a 3-month prison sentence or a fine of between 51 and 516,000 euro. However, Article 24 of the Sporting Justice Code forbids placing or taking of bets directly or indirectly on events organized by the FIGC, FIFA, and UEFA. Anyone who does risks the 3-year ban and a fine of at least 25,000 euro. Tonali's legal team confirmed last week they'd met with prosecutors. They were seeking a quick resolution to the case. Juve midfielder Nicola Fagioli and Villa's Nicola Zaniolo have also been investigated. Fagioli got a 7-month ban last week. Zaniolo was questioned alongside Tonali during the international break at the training base. He's maintained he did not use the platforms to bet on sport. Beppe Riso mentioned he's shaken up by the situation. That's Tonali's agent. Eddie Howe reaffirmed Newcastle's long-term commitment to Tonali last week and said after the win over Crystal Palace, it was his idea for the midfielder to do a lap of St. James's Park at the end of the match. So right there. So Tonali, no surprise that it finally did happen. So we'll see what goes on there. And also, Jarrett, how are you about games with Christmas? How are you on games at Christmas time?
Don't we have this? Are we just talking about England alone, or?
Well, in general, because England is now a part of it, because Wolves and Chelsea are going to take place on Christmas Eve. First time in 20 years.
It was always the Boxing Day, though. Like, Boxing Day was always special in that regard. We had games all day. I feel like we have this conversation every year. It's about that time of year, so let's have it again. The festive fixtures are absolute BS, and they do nothing to maintain.
So bad.
They do nothing to maintain the protection of players that leagues allegedly and teams allegedly care about because they are investments at this point because of the cost of the player. Stop doing it.
I mean, 3 matches, 9 days is so bad.
We already get like NBA on Christmas here. I think we're getting NFL on. We've gotten NFL on Christmas before too. And like, do we need more?
Well, we're getting that one on Christmas League now.
Yeah, I have to say, I guess.
Yeah. Is Libertadores a 2-leg final? Will is asking.
Yes, I believe it is. Like, there's, and this is the thing as well. Like, yeah, do the 2-leg finals all the way through, man. Like, do that. I'd be fine with that. Please, begging you.
Yeah. Abby, to answer your question, according to Talk Sport, Tonali is going to train and compete in club friendlies during his competitive absence. So technically, I don't know if it's a paid suspension.
The billable hours are going to be amazing.
Oh,
as they like, they're going to check under every single rock they can find to find out if Milan knew about this.
Oh yeah,
because if like there's even a whisper, or if they can even find like a tax receipt of, hey, Milan might have known he had a problem. Well, oh boy.
Oh,
Cass is going to be busy.
Oh my God. I'm checking to see festive fixtures really quickly because Michael Head is asking if they're on Christmas Eve and then they play on Boxing Day. Michael says, so if they're playing on Boxing Day as well? If so, damn. If they're going Christmas Eve to Boxing Day.
I would assume that I don't know for sure. I would assume that they're going to do what they've done in the past, which is like you'll have a bunch of the Boxing Day fixtures. Maybe you have one game on Christmas Eve, one game on Christmas Day, and the rest on Boxing Day.
Okay, so here's what
I'm guessing, but I don't know for sure.
We've got the game on Christmas Eve with Wolves and Chelsea. That's at the Molineux. Then you have 5 matches on Boxing Day. And Wolves turn around and Chelsea turn around and play on the 27th. So basically, they play on Christmas Eve, then they play on Wednesday. So they go Sunday, Wednesday for their next matches in festive fixtures. They go 24, 27, and 30. 24, 27, 30. 3 matches in a week, basically. Less than a week. 3 matches in a week. That's festive fixtures for you, specifically for Wolves and Chelsea. 24, 27, and 30.
Yeah, that's where, like, we got kids in the academy you didn't know existed going to be playing in some of those games.
Yes.
And the problem is, though, you got to – how do you figure out pricing for these kind of things? And how do you figure out what the right price is and what the right consumer surplus is for this? Because there's no way you can ask people to play games like that. It's not sustainable as a human being to maintain without getting hurt.
Yeah.
How do you, in good conscience, ask people, hey, y'all want to buy tickets to 3 games in a week? That's cool. Guess what? You might only see the starters 1.5 of those games.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be like, Bobby Fitzgerald from the U16 team who's going to get out there and get a run in the big stadium.
Yep.
And you're going to have people like, hey, man, we paid big money for these games. And you guys aren't playing. Yeah, because they'll die.
Yeah. Before you go.
Yeah, which ones y'all going to charge full price for? And how are people going to pay full price for that?
Yep. Before you go, Will wants to know, since you weren't on when we had the discussion yesterday at baseball down here, Snakes alive, Phillies dead. Your thoughts?
I was trying to be nice to Rich because I know Rich lives and dies with this. He's also our Philadelphia correspondent. I maintain that is a huge gut punch for Philadelphia because the last 2 years, that offense just clicked in the playoffs. And I thought they needed it. Between your offense was clicking like nobody's business for the wild card games, the NLDS, and for most of the NLCS. And on top of that, Zach Wheeler was unhittable. Aaron Nola was damn near unhittable until the last game. Ranger Suarez gave you more than any other team's number 3. It was just, dude, it feels like a huge missed opportunity in the last 2 years for Philly not to have walked away with one title with these teams. We'll see how they adjust it. But yeah, I maintain like this isn't like well they'll go for it next year. No, that would have been Arizona's prerogative because Arizona is an insanely young team. Also, it is on site with Nate Silver because one, can't stand him. Two, the whole thing about this being a terrible World Series, you get the hell on you and your mama. First of all, it's the number 5 and number 11 media markets in the World Series.
Yeah. It ain't small town.
It is Texas, who paid out the nose for multiple years to chase this very moment because they'd never won a World Series. And they literally just shelled out all the money that they had in the last few years to try and make this moment happen. And they got it. And then you have Arizona, who is if your belief is that this isn't a good World Series strictly because it's not Philadelphia and Houston, then just say that.
Uh-huh.
That's all. I just say that.
Yep. Be a part of it. And just sit there and just say that. That's all you need to say. Don't beat around.
Yeah, don't pretend like it's some grand statement about like, oh, this is going to be disappointing. And
this is going to be disappointing.
Yeah, don't do that. Just say, man, Houston, Philly, round 2 would have been amazing. That's what I wanted. Okay, then just say it. Don't do this disingenuous thing about it not being good. It's 2 teams that got here because they went and won games on the road. They won Game 7 on the road. Arizona won Game 6 and 7 on the road to get there. It's absolutely bonkers, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And you have a team of current stars and a team that is built for today and tomorrow. Texas is like going to feel like this is their destiny. This is what they're built for. Arizona might be too young and stupid to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
It should be a lot of fun.
Yep.
So someone put Nate Silver in a locker for the next few weeks, and then he doesn't have to worry about it.
All right, we'll put Nate Silver in a locker, and we'll have you back tomorrow.
Yep.
All right, that's Jarrett. Michael Head says that scheduling is about normal for festive fixtures. Not good, but normal. Meanwhile, Germany and France and most others are on Christmas break, which is stupid. So Kaylor Hodges coming up just around the corner, but since we are racing to the top of the hour, I've got to read something quickly, or at least try to read something quickly, and try to sound like I know what I'm talking about. For odor-free, clean, fresh air, one place you need to go. It's a Lemonize service. QR code over my left shoulder for those of you who are watching on Twitch, on our YouTube channel, and on the 280-character app. Deodorizing in closed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos, the Lemonize service has created a customized solution that eliminizes all organic odors, including those like pets, cigarettes, and food. Realtors and property managers use the Lemonize service to eliminate bad odors to help them sell or rent their homes that much faster. It's a turnkey process. Thank you, Ricky. Makes it easy to work with realtors and property managers. Kind of the environment. We like that. Offering a green way to get rid of odors without any kind of toxic residue whatsoever, different than Febreze or our favorite masking agents that we have either under the sink or above us in the cupboard. Because when we reach under the sink or above us in the cupboard to grab that masking agent and you spray the masking agent in the air, there's a reason they call it a masking agent. It just masks the odor. It doesn't attack the problem like our friends at Lemonize Service do with their proven scientific formula, destroying odor down to the molecule. Pricing very, very easy. Either by the cubic foot or parts per million to come up with a price that's affordable for you, offering results in 24 hours or less. If you want any extra info about our friends at Lemonize, you have any questions, frequently asked or otherwise, one place you need to go is the website. This is where I grab my pen. Homework assignment. Lemonize.com, but after the .com, go /Atlanta so they know what part of the world that you are addressing them from to end a sentence in a preposition. Full homework assignment, ELIMINIZE.com/Atlanta, Lemonize.com/Atlanta. A Lemonize service, proud sponsors of everything SDH every day of the week. See if I can get something resembling a slow fade here. The answer is probably no. Yeah, see, like at about 4, it starts to thud. That's just, it drives me crazy. So now that it is the top of the hour, and we are starting hour number 2, that means it is time for Kaylor Hodges to drop in for the USL Show, and it is a time to discuss everything going on in the USL. Otherwise, if we're bringing in Kaylor and he's hosting something else other than the USL Show, and we're talking about things other than the USL, that might work.
Good point.
So, USL Championship, and I know we're going to talk about League One as well. For those who missed it, we have an interview with Ian Cameron, the head coach of South Georgia Tormenta, up on the network as well. Caught up with him yesterday. And we're going to be doing that as teams here in the footprint get knocked out, as we'll sit there and we'll kind of catch up with them, get some reviews of the season and all this kind of stuff. From 30,000 feet, you look at the eastern side of things and you're going, what in the blue hell happened here in the opening round? So what in the blue hell happened in the Eastern Conference, Kaylor?
Last week when I came on,
you did.
I talked about Pittsburgh and Detroit, and I said there's one team in the East that can beat Pittsburgh, and it's Detroit. And they did. Mm-hmm. And it kind of happened exactly how I said it would. It was going to be a miracle goal in regular time or PKs. And guess what? It was a miracle goal. Lou City goes down to Memphis, and Aiden McFadden, who I said was going to be a key part in this game, unfortunately was the key moment in the game of hitting the post. And we saw the aftermath, which was frankly depressing, where according to fans who were there, he didn't leave the penalty spot for over 20 minutes. He just stood there. And, that is just heart-wrenching. There's no worse way to lose. And I think hitting the bar or hitting the post might be the worst way. I'd rather them sky at 20 feet than hit the post.
Yeah.
Because the sound. Mm-hmm. And Lou City in the end is inevitable. It feels like they always end up here. Charleston takes on a very different indie team without their superstars. And there was some reactions from indie fans saying, if 2 or 3 people caused us to go from winning the game to losing 5-0, maybe we didn't deserve to be here, which I think is an overreaction on their part. That said, the loss hurts, but they weren't the indie team that we thought they were going to be, quite literally. And Birmingham goes down and thrashes Tampa Bay against my expectations. It happened the exact opposite way I thought it would, but also in the weird way I thought it would. I said if they were going to win, they were going to have to congest the midfield. I didn't think that playing the 4-1-4-1 that they could. Yep. And they still congested the midfield. Tampa Bay, I don't think, had a single shot again, which is, I think, the second time that's happened this year against Birmingham where they've had 1 or fewer shots on target. The East was chaos, absolutely ridiculous. And the West was pretty much chalk until you talk about what happened in Phoenix versus San Diego, which, as I said, was going to be the most entertaining game of the week. And dear Lord, did it even surpass my expectations? That was ridiculous.
Oh, I mean, it was crazy. And you're you look at, I want to take this from the East. I want to go East to West. And since the East is our bailiwick here, this side of the Mississippi. And, it's you've got a guy like Trevor James. He's in his last year on the touchline. He's booting himself upstairs. He's getting booted upstairs to an executive position after this season. And you mentioned it last week. Detroit City, they're going to muck it up. They're going to sit there and just try to grind out a result. They're the 8. We know what we're going to do. And it's up to you to try to break down what Detroit City wants to do. It's like be clinical, find that opportunity, put it in the back of the net, or wait until the bitter end to try to figure something out, because you've got Nate Steinwasser in net, who has been known to be and the thing is, I think for those of us who are like USL Nicks and will pay attention to everything, he's one of the most underappreciated. I'm not going to say underrated, but underappreciated keepers, I think, in the USL Championship because of where he is. I don't think Detroit City gets a whole lot of pub, and I'll ask Neil Rule this when we have him on the show tomorrow morning, about a guy like Nate Steinwasser who just kind of flies below the radar because of where Detroit City is.
Nate Steinwasser, I've seen a lot of great goalkeepers being able to do what I do with Birmingham Legion, being able to get onto the field. I get down early just to watch the other team's goalkeepers. I've always had that infatuation with goalkeepers, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen Waite. He's a Jamaican international capped at the senior level. Great goalkeeper. I've seen Calendar for Inter Miami. I've seen Brad Guzan, who he has a career that people would kill to have. I saw Rocco Rios Novos. I've seen Paul Blanchette, who they all bring something different. Blanchette was just the best, shot stopper I've ever seen. Rios Novos has the best footwork I've ever seen out of a goalkeeper.
Really?
Straight up. His footwork is immaculate. That said, between a U.S. men's national team player and Calendar, between Brad Guzan, who, again, U.S. men's national team glory, all these guys I mentioned, Nate Steinwasser had the most impressive warm-up I've ever seen, ever. From MLS down, he caught everything.
Wow.
He had over 50 balls shot at him. He did not drop a single one. And his footwork, is it as clean as Rocco? No. Is he exactly the exact shot stopper that, Paul Blanchette is? No. Is he the big physical presence of Drake Calendar? No. But if he gets his paw on it, you're not getting the follow-up. That's the thing, is that's what makes him so good. Yes, he can parry it, but if he gets his paws on it, you're not getting a follow-up, which is where most of these little scrubby goals kind of happen. And he is so impressive. I've never seen anything like it.
So a point made by one of our folks in the Twitch pitch, Abby, who's a Fort Lauderdale Strikers fan from the NASL day. She says, I think goalies are best when they've played other positions in their past. And I think what that does is it gives you that appreciation, that three-dimensional look of so it's almost like a defensive driving course. When you get to play other positions, you understand the reactions of folks in front of you, so you can react to that when you're between the sticks.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that Rocco has going for him. I mean, he at times, in Koke Vegas, same thing, basically just another defender and just incredible with the ball at their feet. But you can definitely tell which ones are the ones that played other positions, because I don't know if Paul Blanchette's ever done anything different, but he looks like a guy who actually wants to be hit in the face with the ball. He's just that kind of guy. Just seems like just natural shot stopper, doesn't do a whole lot else. Meanwhile, guys like Nate, guys like Rocco, guys like Koke Vegas, you can tell that they've done other things, and it's really obvious.
What does this say about Pittsburgh, other than the fact that Bob Lilly is probably still yelling at his club there at Highmark? They've not been allowed to leave since the weekend. He probably still has them there. Maybe he brings in food and water for them so he can continue to yell at them. And so, if you're on the waterfront right there on the river in Pittsburgh, it is Thursday morning, and you probably still see Bob Lilly yelling at his Riverhounds team as you're heading to work on a Thursday morning. What does this say does this say more about what Detroit City did or what Pittsburgh didn't?
I think it's hard, because when you look at Bob Lilly in this, or specifically the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, but it's kind of hard to separate the two at this point. Technically, if you want to be very technical, Pittsburgh only has their one playoff win last year against Birmingham Legion, go through on penalties, technically doesn't count. And then they 7-0'd Birmingham 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. That was their one win. Last year, they blew a 2-goal lead, I do believe, to lose City away in the final 15 minutes. And then in this game, they are pretty much, them and Sacramento are your only two teams that people think are going to win it all. And they don't. I think it's kind of hard to separate the two, because I don't think Pittsburgh gets to where they are without Bob Lilly. But if you're a Pittsburgh fan or a USL fan, you kind of have to wonder, would somebody else get us farther in the playoffs? Who cares if we're the 1 seed if we get knocked out? It's hard to say, but I think this is more of a praise Detroit City than anything, because there was some chat, and we talked about this on the USL show. There was chat of, well, Pittsburgh absolutely dominated them. Detroit did not do enough to win. And there were some Detroit fans saying, actually, we dominated the game because we obviously won. I think Detroit City just said, we're going to play our game. Who cares? It's not like they are a 3-goal-a-game team that just got shut down to 0.07 XG, right? They knew what they were. We are a defensive-minded first team. We are a defense-only minded team, really. and we'll let you shoot. We'll let you have the ball. We don't care. We love to do the grindy stuff. We will run you into the dirt in the sense that you're just going to be frustrated. And then Dominic Gasso with probably the goal of the playoffs, an unreal volley. And the only one that can come close is Arthur Rogers in League One with a real deal Olympico, not just I shot one from the corner and it snuck in. This was, I think he actually meant to do it. Yep. And so it, that's what it takes for Detroit City to win. And I think they kind of knew that. And did they dominate the stats or the play? No, but also they did their game and they won. So it worked.
Lou City goes through, we mentioned the heartbreak for Memphis 901 and Stephen Glass, but for Lou City, when you've got a coach like Danny, who I think really has the future ahead of him, how good of a coaching job, considering all of the I mean, literally, Lou City to me seemed to be one of the more streaky teams in the Eastern Conference this season. And now you get this win. This really could be one of those things that could spur momentum for you going forward. And could we see the Lou City, when we think of the stereotypic Lou City teams, the one that goes storming through playoffs and makes it to the last game of the year? Is this a springboard for them in your mind, or are there still some issues, even though you got a 5-8 coming up?
I think there's still issues. When we did the USL show, we put out a graphic that says these are the matches that we predict, but we explain our, thought process. Everybody picked Lou City to win this game versus Detroit, but nobody wanted to. We all were just like, Detroit can do this. They have the defense. Lou City hasn't proved that they can score. And this is a team that struggles to score. And this is a team that doesn't allow people to score. And then we said, but it's kind of Lou City and they're at home. And, we kind of played that song and dance. I think there's a lot to be desired. Zemla, their goalkeeper, came out with his hair on fire at the beginning of the year, just played out of his skull, and then frankly has been bang average since his hot streak. And I kind of questioned his goalkeeping in the penalties, and the penalties are a crapshoot. I get that, but there's a couple of them that you sit there and say, you should probably save that, and you shouldn't say that on a penalty. There is no world where you should look at a keeper and say you should save that on a penalty, but there's a couple. I think if they're going to do it, they have the best opportunity. They're getting to play at home as the 5 seed. That doesn't happen.
No.
And they're given a redemption chance. They are given the opportunity to redeem themselves. And if they're going to make the run, if they are going to make the Eastern Conference Championships for the 9th year in a row, I think, this is the time to do it. This is the team to do it against. But just like I said last week, there's nothing I trust about this Lou City team.
Then down at the bottom, I know a lot of folks are looking at Charleston and how they thumped Indy and putting 5 on the board and just walking out of Patriots Point going, yeah, we took care of business. And then, you mentioned Birmingham and what it was like for Birmingham to go on the road to Al Lang and shut out Tampa Bay, which I think was probably one of the more stunning results in the weekend, because if you take Detroit's and you say Detroit City's is number 1, yours is either 1A or number 2 there at home base for the USL show. When you look at this 3-7, I still don't know what Charleston team I'm going to be getting at times. And this could be an opportunity, if Birmingham has its head screwed on straight, to get the win here, even though it is at Patriots Point. So
this is going to be an interesting one, because I think it depends on if Legion come out with the same fire.
Right.
They go and get a 3-0 win, but it was a true team performance. And one thing I said was, this was not one player playing out of his skull. This was not just Tabor Ateka Preston playing out of his skull, having the game of his life. Everything felt like it could be replicated. This was not a couple of guys playing the best game of their career. Everything felt like it could be replicated. That said, you're looking at future probably $1 million transfer, and Matthew Corcoran is going to be gone for the World Cup.
Yep.
And I haven't seen Mexico's team, but I'm going to bet a pretty penny that Fidel Barajas is going to be on the way too. You're losing 2 superstars, but that said, I think the superstar that Charleston is losing is a bigger deal. Matthew Corcoran was not in the starting 11. He's been kind of out in the fringes. I think Legion kind of knew that this announcement was coming.
Yeah.
And said, we're going to roll with a different 11. You can come in at the end. Meanwhile, Barajas, when he's on the pitch, Charleston goes. And it's kind of that simple. Without them, I mean, Marcanic is really good. He is really, really good. He was the goal scorer last time these 2 teams played 2 weeks ago. But, I think that this is a much different side. This is going to be a close game. I wouldn't be shocked by either team coming out with the win. I think Legion have a lot of fire right now. I think in a weird way, I think some Charleston fans are saying we scored 5, we used up our goals, which is not a real thing. We all know that's not a real thing, but I think there is a little part of our brain of what if we did?
Yeah.
And that has to get to players just a little bit, maybe not as much as fans, but just a little bit. And I think it's going to be a close one. I think that this Legion team showed that they can get a team victory. Charleston has been a team that swept them this year. The only sweep of the round two at all came in this particular matchup, and Legion probably have a score they want to settle. Like, yeah, you beat us in the regular season, but this is the playoffs. We want to take you out now. This is when it matters.
Any concern between the sticks, Van Oekel and Spangenberg? Did I notice a swap out at the half or late first half that I mentioned? Did I see that right?
Yeah, so Trevor Spangenberg came in for Matt Van Oekel. Matt Van Oekel took what looked like a cleat to the chest at the end of the first half from Cal Jennings. Turns out, no, it was his leg. And for people who are into seeing injuries, Matt Van Oekel, Matt, I'm getting on to you, dude. He posted his injury without the not safe for work thing. And so I couldn't sleep. So I went to the bathroom, and at 4 a.m, that was the first thing that showed up on it's this gory, gaudy injury, which I'm not going to describe. And it's like, Matt, why? What's wrong with you? But it was his leg, but he's been back in training. That said, I think Legion fans are happy with whoever. I think personally, the best Legion played all year, Spangenberg was in net. When Legion were at their hottest, Spangenberg was in net. Is that anecdotal? Maybe. But I think Legion fans are comfortable with whoever, and I think that the players are comfortable with whoever. This is not a GK1 and a GK2.5. This is, I think, to a lot of fans and probably to some of the players too, this is a GK1, 1A, 1B. And so I think there's not a lot of concern for Legion fans.
Kaylor Hodges at the USL Show, hanging out with us, breaking down everything USL Championships, USL League One, and the playoffs as we've gotten out of the opening round in the championship down to the Final Four in League One. On the left-hand side, on the Western Conference in the championship, it was chalky, but what you've got is you've got 3 heavyweights in Sacramento, San Antonio, and Orange County making it to the second round, taking care of business like we thought that they would.
Yeah, I mean, Sacramento did it early, and they did the Sacramento thing, which was we score early. We don't care about scoring anymore because you're not going to. Mm-hmm. Could care less. You're not going to score on us. And they did everything to shut down New Mexico. They knew what to do, and Jack Gurr was just having an absolute field show over on that, right-hand side. It's always a pleasure to watch him play. You go down to San Antonio where San Antonio goes through on what probably got featured on when playing it out from the back goes wrong. And that said, if you take that goal out of consideration, not fair, but if you do, say this is a 0-0 game, one of the most entertaining 0-0 matches I've ever watched. It was truly back and forth. It was nervy. It was exciting. San Antonio goes through. So you get San Antonio versus Sacramento, which if I remember Ryan Allen saying on the show, San Antonio has not picked up a win in Sacramento since 2021.
Okay.
Sacramento doesn't lose at home, and this is something that I drive home on the show every single time. I think if I have my numbers correct, Sacramento in the last 2 calendar years has only lost 3 times at home.
Wow.
I call it the den of the indomitable, and you cannot beat them at home. You just can't. But if there's any team that probably can, it's the team that are the self-proclaimed mentality monsters, right? That's the team that you kind of back. Let's go down a little bit farther where you go to Orange County versus El Paso, and El Paso probably gets hosed a little bit with an awful call at the top of the box. And Benny Diaz got a lot of flack for the free kick that went in. Milan Olowski scores from the free kick, which a lot of people said that shouldn't have been a foul, and it shouldn't have been. I think because people said, well, he kind of guessed and he went the other way. I personally think where Benny Diaz messed up was putting 4 people in the wall. I understand that it's like 22 yards out and you want as many people there, but with the way he set it up, he had a 4-man wall, a person gap, a 5th man, and then there were 2 Orange County players. When the shot was taken, it turned into a 7-man wall. Benny Diaz had no idea when and where that ball was struck. He couldn't see it.
Yeah.
If it were me, not a professional goalkeeper, obviously, I would have set up 3 on the far post and said, you can beat me there. You're so close that it's hard to get it up and down. You can beat me there. That way you can at least get a little bit of a visual on the ball, because I don't think he had any clue when and where it was struck at all. From there, Benny Diaz, thank you. Benny Diaz had a really great game, but just like I said preseason with El Paso, I trust the defense, but who was going to score? And that was kind of what it was. And they're facing off against Phoenix versus San Diego, who one of the most entertaining matches I've ever watched.
Yep.
Also, you look at this match and you kind of get reminded, Phoenix are one of the biggest villains that we've ever seen in the USL.
Really?
They love it. Do you know, if you go to Phoenix Twitter, they are so happy they were the ones that killed San Diego. There is not a single hint of hate it for San Diego. That was a good rivalry.
No remorse at 38th and Washington, is there?
None. Absolutely none. And I talked about it. They have the best 3 to 4 man attack. You can get Formea, whichever one is pronounced. I don't remember. You have Armanakis, you have Arteaga, you have Danny Trejo, not that one. And they are all playing and they are incredible on the attack. And they're kind of buzzing. And I think if you're looking at Orange County, we are doing a USL show pick 'em, and we're just trying to see how many people we got. And of our 100 people that have responded to the Google form so far, this one is a 50 point something to 40 point something.
Okay.
It's only separated by, if I look real fast, 3 votes.
Wow.
3 votes. People think that El Paso versus Phoenix is as close as it gets because Phoenix just played incredible, and they thrive in this villain role. That said, they played on a Sunday. They get one less day of rest, and they also, frankly, it was an emotional victory.
Yes,
the last minute kick to frankly kill a franchise.
Yep.
Players, that some of them take on the villain role too. That's an emotional thing. Orange County gets to go back home. It's one of those that I think that if you're Orange County, you got that extra day. You didn't have to travel, and your fans know what Phoenix is. This is also a rivalry. And so the fans know I trust Orange County here, but this is also one that if Phoenix just goes on to their, Darth Vader march to the playoff final, not shocked at all, because this is just who they are.
You've got in the Halloween candy, traditionally what we do is we do juice boxes. And when it comes to looking at matchups, you have 2 teams who are on the minus side of the Reese's peanut butter cups here, since this is what we like to give out during Halloween. Charleston is on the minus side at a minus 116. Lou City's on the minus side at a minus 154. Sacramento is on the plus side to win in 90 minutes at a plus 122. Orange County is a plus 112. Phoenix is a plus 204, as is San Antonio, to win outright in 90 minutes. So if you're looking to put some Reese's Halloween candy on some folks, San Antonio and Phoenix might not be bad selections here coming up in round 2.
I take Phoenix. Honestly, if I'm putting any of the chips, I cannot understate Sacramento does not lose at home.
Right.
They just don't. And this is a team we saw get 20,000 fans. This is a team that can get 10,000 on any given night, plus playoffs. Yes, they're going to show out. I don't know if San Antonio can do it. There. Phoenix, on the other hand, this is one of those that somehow they shut down Milanowski and say you can go to Europe a couple weeks early, pal, and they win, 3-1. I'm not shocked at all. That I'm a bit, that's where my brain would go. But also El Paso at home. Yeah, El Paso. Wow, Orange County at home. Yeah, you also have to back them. I think that's good money either way. If whichever one you want to put it on, I think that put your Reese's on it. Yeah, don't be shocked by it.
No, but a plus 204 putting your Reese's on a team in Phoenix. That's where I would be leaning.
Yeah,
if you have some spare Reese's in the freezer, go for Phoenix in the round of 4 in the Western Conference. Before you go, League One is down to the Final Four, and I also wanted to get your comments on John Harkes. It's amazing what happens when you reseed. You end up with Charlotte crossing over to take on the Murder Owls in Union Omaha, and Northern Colorado with Trevor Ammon, the League One Golden Boot. It's great to see what Eamon Zayed has done there with Hailstorm and going to North Carolina FC for your Final Four in USL League One.
I think Ryan said it for North Carolina, Northern Colorado. We desperately wish that those were reversed because North Carolina was the best road team in the USL League One this last year with 11 road wins. Meanwhile, Northern Colorado was the best home team in USL League One with 11 home wins. Instead, reverse fixture doesn't work that way. Yep. I think that this Northern Colorado North Carolina match is going to be your most entertaining one.
Yeah,
I think that this is going to be one that if you are looking to put on a League One match, I mean, yes, Amon is the guy who is going to steal the praise because he got a hat trick against Forward Madison. I get that, but it was also kind of an end of the match hat trick where Forward Madison was chasing and, not saying it wasn't real, but also it's not like he got that through the first 60.
Same state, yeah.
Yeah. If you are looking at this North Carolina team, it's young, it's scrappy, and it's fun. McLaughlin is crazy. He's so good. And then you also have oh my gosh, Jaden Cervania, who is a real deal talent, Puerto Rican international, very young. And he plays the 10 or that left wing really well. He is super fluid in where he can go. It's going to be a fun matchup. I will say this though, Union Omaha just got a week break and they went 14 unbeaten. You have to wonder if they are a little bit bitter about it because yes, you get the week off to recover and your body gets the rest it needs, but also they were on a heater of all heaters. You have to wonder if them getting that rest got them off their game a little bit. Meanwhile, Charlotte goes down 1-0 to Greenville, and then they just put up 3. And they have this guy that comes off the bench named Dane Kelly. Ever heard of him? All-time USL leading goal scorer.
Yeah, I heard of him.
He's their bench player. And he's a guy that you can call on if you need. Charlotte's kind of running hot. And while I do trust this back line of Union Omaha, I trust all the pieces that Union Omaha has. You have to wonder what this week of rest does for them. As for Harkes, we had kind of been hearing the rumblings for a little bit that this was on the way.
Yeah.
And that said, you cannot understate what he did in Greenville. If you have a chance to go up to Greenville, this is, mostly Atlanta based. If you have a chance to take that 2.5 hour drive up to Greenville, there are Liberty and there are Greenville Triumph stickers everywhere. There's not a single storefront that does not have the green and blue on it somewhere. Hearts is a key part of that. You kind of have to wonder what's next for him. You say, is it going to be maybe an MLS assistant?
DC United head coach. That's what my gut tells me.
I wouldn't be shocked at all. I also, if I'm thinking, hey, maybe he's going to stay in the USL sphere, a team that you mentioned earlier with their head coach getting promoted, John Harkes with this Detroit City side would be disgustingly good. He's last year, and it's his 4 years in Greenville, defensively minded coach who this year was able to get goals, was able to change his system. This Detroit City team is already built to defend, and he was able to get goals out of places you didn't think they would. He is the perfect coach to take over this current Detroit City roster, in my opinion. But in all reality, he's probably making that move to MLS.
All right, give me the plug. Hit the promo for me with at the USL Show.
At the USL Show, every single Tuesday, we're live at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. And it should go up the next day, assuming that I'm like alive and cognizant. That's really what's going on. I said it last week. We're going to start the history of the USL, which is a super exciting series we're starting to talk about. And there's a couple things in the work. I talked about how I'm not a professional goalkeeper, but there may be a series starting soon with a couple of them. So just want to give a little hint, a little sprinkle of that. It could be possibly on the way.
Looking forward to it. So, Kaylor, you're due back with any and all of at the USL Show parties at this same time next week, and we'll get into as the teams cut in half one more time. We'll talk conference finals on the championship side and a final on the League One side. Thanks for hanging out.
Let's do it. Thanks.
All right, that's Kaylor Hodges. He's at Kaylor Hodges. I know that surprises you on the Twitters. He's at Kaylor Hodges at the USL Show on the 280 character app. And it's cool to have them come on every week, especially during the postseason, to break things down. Like I said, Neil Rule, the play-by-play voice for Le Rouge, will be on at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning before we go into the weekend whip-around, patent pending, trademark coming sooner, hopefully, rather than later, when it comes to breaking down the playoffs. That's the word we're looking for. So it's great to catch up with Kaylor when we can and rock and roll. Go for it, Harry. We'd love it. Thanks for being a part of everything. Like and comment on the homepage for SDH here as well. Fantastic. Thanks for being a follower of San Antonio FC. Man, that 1-4 is going to be tough. It really is. San Antonio, if anybody can knock off Sacramento at home, it could be San Antonio. That's going to be a great game this weekend. So keep an eye on the 1-4 out west. And Phoenix, the point was made. Phoenix, they don't mind being the bad guy. And they have a chance to do it against Orange County. Wouldn't surprise me if, like I said, if you have some spare Reese's this time of year at a plus 204, Harry, San Antonio's a plus 204, and our friends in Phoenix at 38th and Washington are a plus 204. If you got some spare Reese's, you might want to go there. Before Niko Moreno comes on, and we're going to talk about his conversation that he had with Nico Ladero, big news out of Seattle this past week. Let's get into gossip, rumor, and innuendo and what to watch. Manchester United planning to ask David De Gea to return on a short-term deal 4 months after they let him leave at the end of his contract. 3-letter paper. Take the information at your own peril. Manchester City exploring the possibility of signing Jamal Musiala from Bayern Munich. Last season's treble winner are going to face competition from Liverpool to sign him. That's from our friends at Build. Bayern are in doubt over whether to pursue a deal for Joao Palhinha from Fulham in January after almost signing him in the summer. Real Madrid and Barca keeping tabs on Gabriel Jesus. Manchester United, Liverpool have been watching Spain defender Robin Lenormand and could move to sign him from Real Sociedad next year. Aston Villa have emerged as front runners to sign Atletico Madrid right back Nahuel Molina, who helped Argentina to win the World Cup last season. Jose Mourinho expected to leave Roma at the end of the year, and Tammy Abraham could follow him back to the Premier League. I don't know who would want to pick up Jose Mourinho in the Premier League. West Ham could seal the signing of Club America's center back Sebastian Caceres in January for as little as £6 million. That's a bargain. Jump on that. Manchester United, Arsenal, Man City continuing to monitor Michael Coyote despite the Italian right back 19 signing a new deal with Fiorentina. Ian Matson set to leave Chelsea in January after failing to secure a starting place, but the 21-year-old Dutchman who plays left back or in midfield has no intention of going back to Burnley, where he spent last season on loan. West Ham also poised to start looking at a potential replacement for manager David Moyes. Not shocked. Former Greece defender Socrates is set to be reunited with former Arsenal teammate Hector Bellerin at Real Betis, having been a free agent since leaving Olympiacos. Ex-Barca and Mexico defender Rafa Marquez ready to coach Barca's first team after impressing with the club's B team, says his former teammate Gerard Piqué. And lastly, Al Nassr forward Sadio Mane is in the process of purchasing French fourth-tier club Bourges Foot 18. Must be nice to have that kind of money. That's all I can say. All right. So we are now at the final half hour of the show on your Thursday, which means one thing, me choking on my Mountain Dew, and then the other thing, turning the corner, heading to the West Coast, and grabbing our buddy. Niko Moreno, what is up?
Hey, what's going on, John? SDH family, happy to be on. Lots to talk about. We just had some, you could say, exciting couple of games yesterday. It was at least feisty on one end, a little bit of what we were expected on the other, but it was good. It's been a busy week for sure, and just excited to be on.
So drop your knowledge what happened last night.
Well, where should we start? Should we start in the East?
They were the first one to kick off, brother.
Man, I mean, I don't know who's shocked that Charlotte just kind of laid down and took it. They've been the definition of inconsistency, and I don't like to use the word mediocrity, but pretty close to it. Let's just kind of get there. Even that last game, both games actually against Miami, I said here that I don't know if they deserve that 2-2 draw, and then in the second one, Kalina saves them, and he becomes the hero of the story, at least to get them to the next step, the next game, and then the Red Bulls just dominated them, and I couldn't believe the score line, because I was like, do the Red Bulls really have 5 goals in them? And they really did. I think Tolkien's been very interesting, man. He's a guy that has really put on this character of being, Captain Red Bull, and whether it's through the interviews or his play and his little dances and taking PKs. Yesterday with the free kick, the 2 assists he had, I mean, he's just been outstanding for the Red Bulls that, true to their form, true to their system. I think yesterday they got some maybe unexpected goals or goals that weren't coming in during the season. But that's what happens when you get in form, and it makes you a dangerous team when, way, and then all of a sudden you get some momentum, you start believing in those players, and they get a big score line.
Then the other game. It's kind of like in March Madness, where you have the one game, one day where the lower seeds win. Then the other days, chalk and ball.
Absolutely. Well, San Jose and Sporting Kansas City, I think that the thing we were all looking for was who was going to play San Luis. Because if San Jose went through, I don't think anybody would have been excited. Maybe San Luis fans, City fans, knowing that they get a rather more accessible or easier team. Because now the rivalry's on, and we'll talk about that in a second. But going back to the game, I thought Sporting Kansas City wanted it more. I thought Sporting Kansas City was more physical. I thought that they created more at a run of play. They seemed to generate more chances or put the ball in prime scoring positions. We're seeing vintage Russell in every sense. I try to think back on, that defeated Russell that was saying, I don't know how we're going to get out of this when things were going bad for Sporting Kansas City. And that's not the man you saw yesterday. That's not the man you've seen in the last couple of games. At the defensively, they were so solid. I think that the little things that Eric Quicks wanted to do ran through Espinoza at one end, and they weren't easy for him. From both Tommy being the first guy to shove him, press him, push him out wider, or not let him get the ball, all the way back to the left back who did a fantastic job on him. And then on the other side, Davis on Hopi. I mean, that was just a great battle. And Davis, he just locked down that side. So San Jose wanted to get wide. They wanted to try something, but Sporting Kansas City just wanted it more all around. I was surprised that he went to PKs because Kansas City was creating chance after chance after chance. And I think there's one time where Rodriguez even blocks a shot that had already got past the keeper. And obviously credit to the defender for being in that position. But Sporting Kansas City was just a better team. Then you go to PKs. And as soon as you went to PKs, I thought Sporting Kansas City had the edge, simply because you got a guy like Milia that's been there, done that, good at PKs. You got the leadership role. You saw it right from the start. Russell, he puts that first PK away, and he's in the face of the players, and he's going. And so you kind of saw the confidence going towards Sporting Kansas City, and then they win it. Polito, not sure what he was thinking with that PK technique. If you're going to hold up, if you're going to do the slow and easy and you're going to put it down the middle, you better be real sure of where the keeper is. He allows Milia to just kind of stick his foot out there. Not Milia, I'm sorry, but Daniel to stick his foot out there. But still, Sporting Kansas City gets through. They do their happy dance, and now we go to St. Louis, where it'll be exciting to see them play in Blue Hell and then back and forth. I still like St. Louis, though.
Do you like the best of three?
Oh, man, that's a tough one, man, because it's so unusual, unnatural for soccer. I'm going to say no. I like the two legs or the one and done. So do one or the other. Don't, try to make fetch happen. Don't try to just make something that's not really there happen, because you do want the extra game and you do want more of those ratings going through the roofs. And I get it. I mean, that's part of the business, but I personally don't like it. I think it should be either the two leg or one and done. Take your pick.
All right. So then this week is stopping up and we see leg one across the board.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
How do you think that leg one is going to be this weekend? What are you looking at this weekend?
Yeah, no, that'll be interesting. Because it could go one of two ways, right? It could be a learning curve wise, where you're going to go out there and not want to lose the entire series right off the bat in terms of momentum, and you want to maybe analyze the opponent, and you're going to be more conservative, and you're going to have the teams that are going to park the bus, and you're going to have the teams that are going to want to see it that way, or you might get the opposite, where you just go all in. So the approach over this first 90 minutes, I'm interested in seeing. If it was me, I'd go for it. I try to catch a team that has been waiting to play, and whether they have momentum or not, I want to be the protagonist. I want to be the one that puts you on your heels. But it'll be interesting, right? I mean, when you look at Sporting Kansas City and Red Bulls, that's a tougher matchup than maybe people think, right? Because of the way Red Bulls play. I think that they're going to be comfortable. We're playing with house money. We made it where nobody thought that we were going to make it. In Tolkien's words, the haters didn't even expect us to be here, and now we are. Now we're playing the best team in the East. They have the pressure. They're the best team in the league. They have the pressure. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to park the bus. I'm going to make them come at me, and I'm going to be transitional. I'm going to be on the ball and try to either win it at PKs, or I'm going to make it uncomfortable enough where one mistake is going to count the game. But I do see some of these home teams maybe wanting to set the tempo right off the bat, so they don't have to depend on that second game and that third game as much. The Philadelphia Revolution game is interesting for me as well. I think in that first game you will see where he lays out, because New England, as inconsistent as they've been, they kind of put a couple of real nice performances here at the end. So can they hold on to that? Can they push the momentum? I don't see it. I think Philadelphia will do the trick, will do the job. But again, Philadelphia in the playoffs has let me down many a times, whether it's juice boxes or just with you here on your show. So there's some interesting matchups.
What's the most interesting one for you?
Ooh, the most interesting one. There's a couple, man. So I think the Columbus Crew Atlanta is a real good one. And I think you guys have the best matchups. They just put that out there, right? I mean, you bring the West Coast perspective, but the good games are on your side, man. I mean, that's what the good games are at. I mean, if you really think about it, and we'll go into the West a little bit, but this Columbus Atlanta is a good one, right? What happens and how does Gonzalo Pineda plan for not having Almada, who, I don't know, lost his marbles and does a David Beckham type of thing? I'm kidding. And just kicks this guy as he walks away and all this, gets the red card. So puts him in a little bit of a disadvantage. But it's going to be an attacking-minded 3-game stretch, right? I mean, Columbus only plays one way. I think Atlanta has found their rhythm, and with Sava and Silva, I mean, they've really, I think, put together a cohesive unit that it's quick, that is dangerous, that can be explosive, that can win games. But Atlanta has had letdowns on defense, but so has Columbus, right? So I'm really interested in how that plays out. I want to see Kucha's form. I want to see Almada once he gets on this, game and on this 3-game stretch, how he's going to play out. So I think that's the most interesting one for me. That's the one I don't want to miss. I think Nashville, Columbus, strategically will be interesting. Gary Smith and this Nashville team have not been good in the final stretch. They've looked out of sorts. They can't really generate. They've had some injuries. What happens with Leal? What happens with Shuttleford? Can Mukhtar hold the load as he always does? And on the other end, Orlando, record year on points. They look good. A huge and very robust roster that gives Oscar Pareja the ability to do what he wants and plan out each one of these games differently if he pleases. So that's an interesting one for me. And if we go to the West, I like Houston RSL. Yes, RSL has some injury stuff. We don't know if Chicho's going to be there. Can they really put it together? But I think Houston's my dark horse from the West, and I don't want to miss any of those games because I do believe that if Houston plays as good as they've been playing in the second half of the season, watch out for Houston.
You had an interesting thing the other day. Dude dropped a bomb on you. Has to do with that.
What'd you say, my bad?
Mute your speaker. Feedback.
Oh, here we go.
You had an interesting conversation with a dude that's that mug that you out of. What was that like?
Man, yeah, I think that's been the story of the week, if not. I'm not going to say the year, but it's been a very explosive story here in the Northwest. I was privileged to have Niko open up during a conversation in which we started and triggered by the end of Hispanic Heritage Month, right? And that's what we were going for. And throughout the conversation, I asked about his contracts situation. Was he going to come back? Was he not? And he just opens up. And I thought it was it was really refreshing how transparent he was and how candid. He wanted to reach out to the fans. I mean, there was a point where he's saying things to me as if he was talking directly towards the fans, right? But all in all, the conclusion of that was that he wasn't coming back in 2024, that the reason why he was leaving wasn't because of the money or the contract or demanding a role, minutes, nothing like that. It was simply about the approach that was taken toward his contract negotiations. Now that we've had not just that initial talk with him, but the team made him available as well as Craig, due to the article that we had. they really wanted to get, I think, another perspective out there and clarify a lot of things, or allow player and GM to clarify a couple of things. But the story never changed. It was all about Niko saying, look, I reached out to the team first. I just wanted to know. He literally says, quote unquote, I didn't want an immediate solution. I didn't want an immediate response. I just wanted to know if the club and the coach who've known me for years wanted me back for the next couple of seasons. That's all I wanted. And I never got that. I got a maybe. I got a, well, you're going to have to prove yourself. We don't really know what you're going to get. And he's in every right to say, look, I've been giving you 110% every game for 7.5 years. What else do you need to see? And this doesn't go into saying that Craig needs to just give him a blank check and say, hey, what do you want? No, it's just about having that conversation with a player who's been committed, loyal, and without a doubt, the best sounder of all time.
What was it like to have mom tell their
I'm having some issues hearing you. I'm sorry.
No, you're looping through. So mute something to trim down twice. Okay. What was it like for you to have this kind of a conversation and have someone who has been this piece of Seattle for as long as he has? What was it like for you as a journalist to have this kind of a conversation, and what has the fallout been from the fans after this conversation came to light? Go for it.
I mean, it's been amazing, and I need to figure this out because it happened at one of our shows here. Again, I'm not sure what's going on with the phone or the stream, my settings, but it was amazing. I mean, it's honestly, like I said, a privilege. The fans have taken it in various ways. A lot of them have felt like their star player and someone who's been not just a great player on the pitch, but a member of this community. That he's being done wrong, that he's being left out in the cold. And that was never the intent of the article, but that's how fans have taken it, because they see and they feel the love from Nicolas Lodeiro for what he's done. And he's really made a lot of a storm. There are some that understand the reasoning behind what is an industry standard at time, I guess, if you want to call it that way, to wait till the end of the year to have those real focused negotiations about numbers and all, and that's understandable. But a big percentage of the fans just don't want to hear it. They just believe that there should have been an intent, a true conversation given, and that just wasn't there. So there's been a lot of, flashback from fans just being really upset at the whole situation.
So when you look at Niko and what he has meant to this franchise, how would you break down how he has become a part of the fabric of everything there in Seattle? I mean, there's a list of a very few dudes who have meant as much to a team as much as Niko has. How would you break down what he has meant to the community in the time that he's been there?
Oh man, I mean, it's so much, right? Because I don't think there's ever been a Sounders player that has been at that caliber, at that height level, because where he was coming from, what he does immediately when he comes in, right? I mean, Lodeiro came into a season that was lost, that you thought it was over. And with his performance, he becomes a newcomer of the year. He wins it with assists and goals, and he basically almost by himself takes this team to a final that is won obviously as a collective unit, as a team, and yet throughout the time here, always stopped by to say hi to the fans. It didn't matter what time it was. It didn't matter what he was doing. When he's out and about in the soccer community, because his kids have grown up here and they all play Premier Soccer at Starfire, same location where he trains, he always has times for the fans, always has that ability to provide and give to whether it's his son's team or the community in general. That leadership role has really come through in every sense, not just in the community, but also with the team, with the youngsters, those academy kids that would come up to me and tell me, hey, man, I can't believe Niko just sat there and talked to me about the way I strike the ball. And, guys like Josh Atencio, guys like Leyva, who had a very close relationship with Nicolas Lodero, guys like Obed Vargas that are coming up. All these people and all these guys coming through the system were touched, were influenced by Nicolas Lodero's words, play, effort, absolutely everything. So quite honestly, beyond the recognition of bringing this team a trophy every year since he was here, except for one year. Seattle's always won a trophy with Nicolas Lodero. Beyond that, it is the guy that was so clear and honest with the love for the city, the organization, and the community that make him for sure in the Mount Rushmore of the Seattle Sounders. But again, I put him in a list of his own because there is nobody that has done what Nicolas Lodero has done here in the city.
How much of a distraction is this going to be, or is this a group of professionals with this series coming up against FC Dallas where it's just like, yeah, it's out there and it's out there in the environment. We're not going to worry about it. Is this a distraction, or is it just going to be pretty much business as usual for Seattle as they take on FCD?
Great question. And I don't think it's a distraction at all. Actually, per his own words, he feels free. He feels released, right? He feels relieved that this is out there, that he can just focus on playing and enjoying Nico's last dance. I mean, that's exactly what it does. And now the group, the team, yes, not only they're professionals, but they knew. I mean, Niko wears his feelings on his sleeves. He knows, and everyone around him knew where things were heading. Perhaps there was some sort of possibility, and players thought that maybe things would get resolved. But at the end of the day, Niko was very open, and I think that this is not a distraction. I think this actually helps the team because it also takes a little bit of weight from Brian Smetzer's shoulders that has not been very comfortable discussing anything surrounding Nicolas Lodero. Quite honestly, and as part of the article that we had for Sounder at Heart, I hope you guys check it out, he kind of missed the mark on really highlighting what Niko has done and the importance of what his departure could be, and putting him in a list of his own, and I don't know if trying to generalize it by telling me, hey, well, I've had guys like Clint and Roman and Zach Scott, like that's not necessarily what I was looking for. I was looking for him to highlight Nicolas Lodero, and he never quite did that. And even now, after everything came out and after Niko himself said that the door is closed, I'm not coming back, it is definitive. It's not about new negotiations or nothing. We had the time to do that, where I asked Brian, hey, Niko said that he kind of felt like you guys doubted him and you guys didn't really want him, from the coaching staff all the way to the front office. He felt like he's been doubted. And he said, no, I wouldn't do anything differently, because I asked him that as well. So I think it takes some weight off of Brian as well, where he could just focus on the playoffs. He won't get any more of these questions. He can worry about trying to do the best that he can in this Dallas series and then figure out where that goes after that. So I think this, all in all, is not a distraction. It actually helps the squad.
All right, hit the promo for me. I mean, you mentioned the article at Sounder at Heart where you catch up with Niko Lodero and drop a bombshell, but what else is going on at the Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports we need to know about?
Well, if I'm in the show, because I got to figure this microphone out. We literally had this exact same issue, and we had to mute me every single time last week. We are going to be at Soccer Bar. We are going to talk about these 2 playoff games. We're going to talk about Nicolas Ladero, get a little bit more in the weeds. If you look at Pulso Sports, you could also find the initial Spanish interview that kind of broke this news in terms of his feelings and what was going on, as well as Niko doing the best he can to express what's going on in English. I mean, he talked in English. He said what he felt. He said what was going on. So I really want you guys to check that out. If you guys haven't, see how serious this guy is, how transparent he is, and make your opinion on it and know who's wrong or who's right, but understand where the player is coming from. And then we also have Brian Smetzer and Craig Weibel talking at Pulso Sports. So check that out.
My friend, as always, it's great to catch up with you on Thursdays to get the Pacific perspective, not just on what's going on the West Coast, but the East Coast as well. And I couldn't let you go without talking about the big bombshell that you got this week, because it means a lot to everybody there in the Pacific Northwest. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll catch up with you next week, my friend, where the playoffs will be advancing that much slower, but we're still going to get advancing. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you, my friend, and I will get this figured out. I hope that the audio wasn't terrible, at least from my end, but I know I'm making your job harder, that's for sure. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Be good, my friend. We'll see you soon. And there goes Niko. He's going to work on that second cup of coffee. He's got the rave green mug. But yeah, Abby, it just ended up being mute, unmute, mute, unmute. There was a loop in Niko's transmission, and so we just have to figure that out. But no, it was I wanted to talk to him a lot about the Nico Ladero situation. When you have someone that means as much to Seattle as Niko Ladero does, and then have our Niko Moreno absolutely just get this massive piece of news that they got up there in Seattle right before the postseason, and now they're going up against FCD in a best of 3. I know that we're all talking about those kinds of things too, but it's interesting piece of news that they got in Seattle, and I'm glad we got to catch up with Niko about it and rock and roll from there. Since we went through gossip, rumor, and innuendo, what can you watch today? We will let you know what you can watch today, and it's commonly referred to as soccer on TV. ACC Network has women's doubleheader 6 and 8. SEC Network has the same thing, 6:30 and 8:30. TBS has the first international women's friendly with USA and Colombia. This one is from Rio Tinto. It's at 9 o'clock. Fox Deportes has the league that we're really not going to cover or talk about, with a game at 2 o'clock. Tuda NA has Europa League doubleheader starting at 12:45. Olympiacos, West Ham, Liverpool and Toulouse at 3. Unimas has the simulcast of that 3 o'clock match. Universo is simulcasting the international women's friendly with the USA and Colombia. ACC Extra, 5 other matches on the women's side starting at 6, 4 at 7. ESPN Plus on the men's side, 3, 6, 8 matches on the men's side starting at 4 and ending with Seattle and Utah Tech at 9. On the women's side, there's like 11 billion. Let me see if I can count them off real quick. App State and Georgia State, by the way, is at 6 o'clock. You can catch that one on the Plus, and there might be a familiar voice attached to it. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 22 on the women's side, starting at 3, ending at 10 o'clock with 4 matches, including Hawaii and Long Beach State. Flow FC has half a dozen matches on the college women's side. Fox Soccer Plus has the matchup we're not talking about in the league we don't talk about. Max also is part of the simulcast for USA and Colombia at 9 o'clock. Boatload of games in Europa League and Europa Conference League at 12:45 and 3. We'll go over some of the juice boxes there in just a little bit. Argentine Primera's got a triple header on Paramount Plus at 5:30 and 8. San Lorenzo Platense at 5:30, doubleheader at 8. Lanús, Tigre, Newell's, and Godoy Cruz. Brasileiro is a doubleheader at 6 and 8:30. Vasco da Gama, Internacional, Santos, and Coritiba. You could have a Marcelino Moreno sighting watching Coritiba. Peacock also simulcasting the women's friendly at 9 o'clock with USA and Colombia. SEC Plus, 5 matches on the women's side. VIX has the simulcast on everything in Europa League and Europa Conference League. So let's get into Europa League matches of note and we'll see what happens. Abby, thanks for hanging out. As always, it's great to have you here. Real Betis favored on the road at 12:45. Marseille and AEK. Remember, AEK has Matias Almeida. Take the over. Marseille favored at home. Molde Haken, Olympiacos, West Ham. West Ham favored on the road. Rakov and Sporting a big favorite on the road. Rangers, an underdog at Sparta Prague. Sturm Graz, Atalanta, they're favored on the road. TSC, Freiburg favored on the road. That's all 12:45. 3 o'clock. Roma favored at home against Slavia Prague. Bayer Leverkusen, big favorite against our friends Karabag. Leverkusen, a big favorite. Brighton and Ajax. Brighton, a big favorite at home. Ajax is awful. Liverpool and Toulouse. Liverpool, a big favorite. Panathinaikos is an underdog at home with Rennes visiting. Royal Union, big favorite at home as Lusk visits. And our friends from Sheriff are favored against Servette. In the Europa Conference League, looking at juice boxes once again before we go. AZ Alkmaar, Aston Villa. Villa favored on the road at a plus 104. Astana on the road against Balkani. Balkani favored at home. Fenerbahce, big favorite at home. Ghent, big favorite at home against our buddies Breidablik. Klaksvik from the Faroe Islands, favored at home against Ljubljana. Lille, big favorite at home against Slovan Bratislava. Lugano, underdog at home against Club Brugge. No, they don't get a foghorn anymore for how their fans have been behaving in past seasons. Brugge favored on the road. Aberdeen at 3 o'clock is facing PAOK Salonika. They're an underdog at home. Bodo Glimt, a favorite at home against Besiktas. Dinamo Zagreb on the minus side against Victoria Pilsen. Eintracht Frankfurt, a big favorite at home against HJK. Fiorentina, a massive favorite at home against Kukaricki. Ghent, a favorite at home against Ferencvaros. Nordsjælland, a favorite on the road against Trnava. And Legia Warsaw, a favorite on the road as they are taking on Zrinski. So there you go. Those are your Europa Conference League, Europa League things going on. And you know that you can watch them all at 12:45 and 3. You can pick a lot of the games. Go to the Golasso Show and watch it there because it's too many games to look at. We'll be back at it again 9:05 tomorrow. Hopefully we'll be joined by our friends at Beyond Goals Mentoring at 9:30. Neil Rule, the voice of Detroit City, joining us at 10 o'clock to talk about how an 8 knocked off a 1 and what he thinks about the rest of the USL Championship. Then what we will do is we will continue the weekend whip around patent pending trademark coming sooner, hopefully rather than later. Go over the matchups in the first games of the first round of the playoffs in Major League Soccer and anything else on your mind. So thanks for hanging out with us as always. Thanks for putting up with us as always. And we'll be back at it again. Abby says that Ladero's 34, which is up there a bit. He still has some competitive years left. So we will see what Niko Ladero's next stage is. For everybody here at SDH, I'm just John. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back at it again at 9:05 tomorrow morning. And since it is the end of the show, that means I get to do this. Play it safe, everybody. Much plati. I will see you next time.